Hello and welcome to Have You Got Your Shit Together with me, Caitlin O'Ryan, the podcast that celebrates not having your shit together. On today's episode, we have World Poetry Slam champion Harry Baker. He is a poet and a maths graduate. He writes about important stuff like hope, dinosaurs, and German falafel-spoons. His work has been shared on TED.com and viewed millions of times worldwide, as well as being translated into over 20 different languages. His latest collection, Unashamed, was published with Burning Eye in 2022, and he's been sharing poems from it at every available opportunity ever since. He also performs as part of the comedy duo Harry and Chris. I first got to see Harry perform when he headlined Grooveverse in London, and he had the audience completely captivated. We've included one of his poems at the end of the episode. The poem is called Wonderful and is the title poem of his new book, Untold. Harry will be on tour around the UK from May, and you can find more information about that on his website, harrybaker.co, or on any of his social media platforms. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. Here's Harry Baker.
Hey, Harry.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to our chaotic studio down here in London.
A joy to be here.
And you've just come straight down from Manchester.
I have.
How was that? What were you up there for?
It was a wonderful time. I was featuring at a poetry slam, and it brought back wonderful and terrifying memories
All
of
the memories.
taking part in poetry slam.
Yeah.
So I was very happy to be there, in amongst it, doing a set and
Wow.
not being judged
Yeah.
numerically.
So did you start off in slams then?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to. I started going to poetry open mic nights and then
Right.
found out about slams. And just,
Okay.
I had two poems and they both happened to be like about 3 minutes long.
Wow, it's like
so
you
I
knew.
exactly. And so I would alternate them at every single slam I could possibly go to. And I loved it. And I loved getting to meet other performers and also trying to hone my craft, I guess, and
Yeah.
that sense of. Also, like I studied maths, so I think I really like the counting as well. But that part of like going up and then kind of sharing
Yeah.
yourself and trying to connect with people in the room. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, did them for a while.
Wow. I'm terrified of them. I think they're so brutal. It's kind of that like whenever I've gone to like open mic comedy nights or something in Manchester where it'd be like audience judging you.
Yeah.
I just think that's such a brutal part of it. And also it's like really hard to compare people's poetry and stuff.
Yeah, and also I'm still recovering. Like I only
From doing slams, like the
Doing slams.
PTSD.
Just in terms of, I used to think that every poem had to do everything.
Yeah.
But also that it had to be the best thing I'd ever
Yeah,
written.
yeah.
And so for a while, because I was starting out and I was getting better and I was like doing well in slams as well. So I was having that like
The ego
affirmation
boost.
from it. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is how it has to be. And I remember sharing a poem that was just a bit more personal and gentle and it not getting a very high score.
Yeah.
And coming away thinking, oh, that's a shame. That poem's rubbish. And it's
Throw
not.
that
It
one
just
away.
doesn't
No.
fit.
Yeah.
Whereas now I am able to write something that captures a moment and that's what that poem is meant to do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to win any competitions
Yeah.
to be allowed to exist.
It's kind of what you were saying about now doing your longer shows where you're kind of allowed to go on, the audience is allowed to go on the journey with you, as opposed to, I guess a slam almost feels like that instant gratification, almost like TikTok-y culture where it has to grab people's attention immediately and kind of summarise who you are and keep them interested. Whereas when you're able to do like a 50-minute show or something, you can go through every emotion and go on a real journey.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
still remember going to a slam where there were 3 rounds, and I have so much respect for this man. He started off with part 1 of a
Wow.
3-part poem,
A trilogy.
being like, vote me through to his part 2. But it wasn't instantly,
Yeah.
it didn't
It's a good
grab the
idea.
audience or anything. And so they just didn't get through.
Oh
and so
my
we never
God.
got to hear parts 2 and 3.
Oh, no.
But I just thought as a
As a
as
concept.
tactic, as a sort of
Yeah.
like, to hear more, like and subscribe.
That's bold. So how did you get into poetry then? Because like you said, you did a maths degree at Bristol.
did.
That seems worlds away from where you are now.
I was good at sort of science at school, and so thought, what do I do with my life? And so I applied to do medicine, thinking
Oh, wow.
that's a way of getting to help people and
Yeah.
getting to be clever and getting to like do it all. And so I had applied to Bristol to do medicine, and then at the time was starting to go to these open mic nights because I think as a teenager I loved music and I loved
Yeah.
lyrics, and that was what would always jump out at me.
Yeah.
And so I would perform in our school Battle of the Bands competition, but change the lyrics to be about maths, and like
Cool.
it's a real like High School Musical moment
Really
of like
making rock and roll quite
yeah,
geeky.
the nerds coming good, people got behind it. It was lovely. And so like the first time I went to an open mic was just doing a maths rap without any music and
Amazing.
calling it a poem and sort of
Yeah.
making it up as I go. But, you know, learned that when it was just the words, people could hear what I was saying. And also I just wasn't a very good rapper at the time. So like found my voice much more rather
Yeah.
than trying to emulate whoever I was listening to at the time. And so because I thought I was going to do medicine, had done a gap year, and basically in that year went to every open mic I could possibly go to and fell in love with it and realised that I didn't know what being a doctor would be like. It was just something that I thought was a good thing to do. Whereas, you know, there were 20 other people applying for that place in medical school, whereas I was the only person writing my poems, and they wouldn't exist if I didn't do
Yeah.
it. And it's hard to, in that moment, it's hard to quantify that and justify it because you don't know where it's going to go. But I knew it was important, and I wanted to make things and share them.
Yeah.
But I'd done all sciencey A levels, so didn't want to switch courses to do English
Yeah.
and be told that I was doing poetry wrong. Because I was doing it and I was loving it, and I was loving
Yeah.
it as a thing on the side. So I didn't want to ruin that. Whereas still quite like maths, so kind of switch courses from medicine to maths to have room for poems,
Yeah.
which made perfect sense in my head.
Yeah.
And then that meant I had 4 years in Bristol of doing a maths degree, living off a student loan, but just performing as much as possible,
Wow.
so that by the time I graduated, I had a bit more of an impetus and like experience and momentum with it to know that I wanted to try and do it.
Yeah. Oh my God, amazing. Well, on a scale of shit to together, how are you feeling today?
I am so excited for this.
Yay!
And just the title alone made me
Oh,
happy.
amazing.
This question makes me happy. All of it. So that in itself is making me feel less shit.
Good.
I feel loosely together
Uh-huh.
in that I'm doing quite a lot at the moment, and I quite like being busy.
Yeah.
And when I'm able to keep all of those plates spinning, I feel like I'm sort of doing life well.
Yep.
But I'm very aware that because of that, if anything starts to fall apart, I fall apart with it. So I've had times when I felt much more together in terms of my mental health, or just kind of being happy and content. Whereas currently I'm trying to book a tour and finish writing a book and like all of that stuff I love.
Yeah.
And it sustains me and gives me energy and currently feels possible. But there's like it's one day away from all falling apart. So I feel like I'm riding a wave and currently I'm not drowning. So that
That's
feels
kind of-
like a win.
It's kind of part and parcel of, I guess, moving away from maths, which is probably quite a steady career trajectory. Whereas as soon as you choose something creative, it is self-employment and having to find the next job quite a lot, or I guess like book the next gigs and
Yeah, and I think even my teenager in that decision of not doing medicine, it felt like ahead of me was a life of uncertainty. But I was choosing that.
Yeah.
And so it was my uncertainty.
Yeah.
And I also think because of the maths degree, I
Yeah.
kind of love the admin. And so I think I'm quite rare in poetry terms
That's
of like being
interesting.
excited about booking trains and lining stuff up and can I visit
Okay.
a school while I'm doing a tour gig
Yeah.
somewhere and that kind of side
That's a
of it.
great skill
so I
to
think
have.
that is also carrying me through.
Would you say, seeing as you've chosen this path for yourself then, what is your relationship with uncertainty like?
It's evolving.
Okay.
It's ever changing. And I think looking back on it, I'm so grateful that I started when I was still at uni or when I
Yeah.
kind of just like didn't fully know how unlikely it was that things would work out.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, I found this thing that I love, and so I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And then one thing will lead to another. And that's kind of what happened. And I now know how rare that is.
Yeah.
But I think I'd got to a point where over 5 years or so, even though it's uncertain, you kind of find your rhythm in amongst that. So whether that's doing Edinburgh Fringe or whether that is having school bookings in between that feel a bit more kind of steady, I felt like I was at a point where it wasn't just that I had enough gigs, it was that I could choose the ones that I was doing. And the question was no longer, can I be a poet full time? The question was, what do I want to do as a full-time poet? What do I want to say? How do I want to... And so it was suddenly felt like it was all lining up. And then COVID happened. And then I was more uncertain than ever in my life. And only now am I coming back from that. And that idea that actually I don't need to have my calendar booked up 6 months in advance, because stuff will come along, and actually I want to be able to respond to stuff in the moment as it happens, but that balance of being in control versus being able to kind of go with it and trust it.
Yeah, I love that. I just keep thinking about how the relationship to maths and the relationship to this is actually something quite incredible. Like, I remember I was in New York and I ended up speaking to this guy who had a maths PhD, and I was trying to make this big life decision about whether I should change agents or not. And I was really struggling with it on like an emotional level, and he literally sat me down and like mathematically was like, can you figure out like what the best probability of this is, or like have you looked into like how many people like you he has and stuff like this, you know? It was like very mathematical approach to like life decisions. And I've always kind of remembered that. What did he say? It was like the risk to reward ratio and stuff like that.
Amazing. One of my guiding decision-making principles came from Oliver Berkman. Used to have like a column in The Guardian.
Okay.
And when it finished, he kind of wrote a summary of like his favourite things that he'd learned. And one of them was, we're not very good at knowing what makes us happy. So when you're making a decision, don't be like, oh, I'm going to do this thing that makes me happy, because you don't know. Whereas he framed it as, you can do stuff that will either expand you or that will shrink you.
I love that.
And so trying to think, will this expand me?
Yeah.
And often it's the terrifying things that do.
Oh my God, it is. Yeah.
But you know that deep down. And so rather than thinking like, is this going to make me uncomfortable? But thinking like, as a person, am I going to feel bigger or smaller after this?
Yeah.
And again, that's not a mathematical measurement, but it felt more tangible than a sort of like, is this right or not?
Yeah. It reminds me of that quote, which I've said a few times, but it's, your comfort zone is a beautiful place to be, but nothing ever grows there. Like, taking that risk. Okay, so on that then, what does having your shit together mean to you?
I think, honestly, getting a good night's sleep.
Oh my God, yes.
I think, and I've spent years worrying about this, or just taking it to be like a deeper symptom of unrest in my life.
Okay.
And have gone through all the motions of like getting blackout blinds, getting an eye mask.
Oh my God, yeah.
Getting a new but like all of that was sort of like
the investment in sleep.
But again, that's treating the symptoms, not the cause. And a while back I realised that part of it was just like switching to decaf coffee really helped. And so stuff like that. But then on a deeper level, I think I just had a lot of anxiety that I wasn't addressing in my day-to-day. And then that all comes out in the middle of the night when I wake up and there's no way to distract myself. And if I've got a poem I'm working on, that is perfect, because in the middle of the night I start to think about that and then I drift off and that kind of thing.
See, that would keep me awake, because I'd be like, great line, next one. God, I'm amazing.
My poetry is really boring, so it's to sleep. But there was a moment when I realised that actually, in terms of my like mental health and personal stuff, I needed to address some of these things, like in day to day and in my relationships with people, and not just go along with things because I wanted to be the bigger person or be nice, and then be like silently fuming about it later. So I think that when I felt most peaceful, that is when I feel like I've had my shit together on a like personal level.
I guess it's if you've like aligned yourself with your own integrity during the day, so that you're not lay there resenting yourself for having been a people pleaser, or like
Exactly.
the real you kind of seeping out in the evening.
Yeah, and I just think I'm so anti-confrontation. So if there was
too.
ever a moment where like I would want to speak up, I wouldn't.
Absolutely not.
And I would, but almost like congratulate myself on that. I'm like, oh, you like
yeah.
that's not what you wanted, but you've been really nice and given this person what they wanted.
Martyr.
But it's no way to live.
There's no way. Oh my God, yeah. God, and sleep as well just seeps into everything. Like when I'm feeling like really anxious or anything like that, it's just because I've not had a good night's sleep, and you really need those like 8 hours to reset, I think. We're now at the point of an object that makes you feel like you've got your shit together. What's that?
I've brought it. It's in the corner.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to hold it up.
Go get it.
For dramatic effect.
Okay, so it's a black bomber jacket? Is that what we'd say?
I think we could. The key word is chevron.
Oh, a chevron. Is that the stripes?
That is the stripe
Okay.
design named after road markings, as far as I know. But
It looks great.
thank you.
Fashion.
It feels great,
Yeah.
and I feel great in it. It's also quite rustly for microphones, so I may take it off in a bit. But me and my friend Chris are part of a musical comedy duo.
Yeah.
And we, I'll probably bring this up loads during this, but we were signed up with a comedy agency.
Amazing.
That was great for some things and awful for other things,
Okay.
including my amount of sleep at night. But we got asked to go on a TV show in America
Whoa.
called Bring the Funny.
And did you bring it?
We brought our funny, and it was not what they thought was funny. But we had a good time.
Oh my God.
In hindsight.
Yes.
But part of that, one of the first things they did was like, oh, we booked you, and now we've booked you a stylist appointment,
Wow.
which felt
Only in America.
deeply personal. And I was so uncomfortable. And again, this, like, part of this wider relationship was
Yeah.
me in that moment being like, that's not what I want to do.
Yep.
But sure, I'll go along with it. And then to hate it and myself later.
Yep.
But actually, it was wonderful. And it was like getting to like try on different
Yeah.
clothes. And I then realised it wasn't just like being told to wear stuff that you would never normally wear to like change who you are.
Yeah.
Like I was allowed to have an opinion.
Like,
and
what
be
is it, like Trini and Susanna in the 90s when, or the
Exactly.
noughties where they just
Exactly.
completely changed people's hairstyles and everything.
But as part of it,
Yeah.
I got a very similar jacket to this.
Cool.
And when I put it on, I just felt more confident.
Okay.
And suddenly I realised why some people are really into clothes. Like, up until that point, it's just like, is it comfortable?
Yeah.
And like T-shirts, I understand. But it, like that was as far as I went.
Oh.
And it would be like, and then suddenly having this. And then I lost it at a festival.
Oh no.
And then they'd stopped making it. And then my friend, who has a unique superpower of being able to find things on the internet /
Amazing.
in charity shops,
Yep.
I sent him a picture of it, and he like tracked it down and sent me a replacement
That's
one.
amazing.
So it makes me happy. And then it's
Yeah.
also now, this isn't the one like from a stylist appointment, I feel a bit icky. This is like the one lovingly found by a
Oh,
friend.
I love that.
So-
God, yeah, fashion is like armor for some people, isn't it? Like the way that it can make you feel and confidence-wise. A time in your life where you felt like you really had your shit together.
One of my favourite things I've done,
Okay.
and it was a combination of a few things, which is, and it felt very me. And so because of that, I nominate this. It was when I ran the London Marathon
Wow.
dressed as a giant falafel.
Okay. Twist. Can you talk us through the decision-making process?
Yes. I ran the London Marathon in 2012
Amazing.
with an organisation called the Amos Trust, who are an amazing charity who do work in Israel and Palestine,
Yeah.
working for peace. And I'd just been on a trip out to Palestine and was so like moved by it. And this is me still at uni, being like, oh, I've just found out there's an injustice in the world.
Yeah.
I need to single-handedly solve it. Middle Eastern conflict, that's right in my wheelhouse. And so I came back and ran the London Marathon
Wow.
dressed as a homemade replica section of Separation Wall.
Right.
So it was a backpack with some bamboo and a lot of gaffer tape. It was about 2 meters high,
Yeah.
and I'd written Free Palestine
Yeah.
like down the back of
Yeah.
it, and it effectively acted like a sail.
Okay. Oh my God.
And-
Like, was the wind in your favor?
No, because whenever I was running, it was then just like pushing me
No.
back. So, but what that meant was that as I was running it,
Yeah.
like 20 seconds of running past someone on the street isn't enough to get across the nuance of the wider region. But people could see that I was in a outfit that was
Yeah.
making things difficult. So there was
Yeah.
a kind of general support, and also like people just couldn't quite read it. Someone shouted out free plasticine. It was a good time. But then I remember thinking, this is like a really cool thing to do. And
Yeah.
then like off the back of it, there'll be some kind of press coverage, or I'll be able to talk
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
And as I
yeah.
was running around, I could see the TV cameras like moving out of the way.
No.
Because they had just been warned, like,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
too political. That's not what the marathon's about. Like, avoid this guy at all costs. And so I remember feeling really like frustrated and
Yeah.
disappointed by it. And so 8 years later,
Uh-huh.
maybe 9 years later, the marathon had been postponed because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Amos Trust had someone drop out
Right.
and asked me if I would be up for doing it like last minute.
If you
And
dust off the old
this was
falafel.
because they knew first time around I didn't do much training. So they were like, 6 weeks notice, that'll be fine.
Really?
And so I was like, I want to do it again. I
Yeah.
want to do it in some kind of outfit again. And crucially to the story, I've got a poem about falafel. Because this is such a long story. I'm
No,
so sorry.
I'm so invested.
I lived in Germany for a
Okay.
year as part of my maths degree.
Wow.
And-
Math's taken you all over the world, it seems.
And the German language was just like the perfect maths poetry combo because it's so logical, but it's really like fun and playful at the same time. And so I found out the German word for falafel is falafel,
Okay.
but the German word for spoon is Löffel. So if you had a falafel spoon, it was a falafel-löffel. So while I was there, I wrote this poem called Falafel-löffel, all about a guy called Phil, and it was like a
Oh my God.
bilingual
Amazing.
call and response tongue
Yeah, yeah,
twister.
yeah.
Some of my greatest work. And so that was in my head. So I was like, I want to be a falafel-löffel.
Uh-huh.
And then I was thinking, and then in Palestine they have really good falafel, so
Yeah.
that can be a like softer approach to talking about like the hospitality and how warm
Yeah.
the people are and how much I was welcome,
Yeah.
because you don't see any of that in
Absolutely
the news.
not,
And
yeah.
also, it's soft enough that TV cameras aren't going to like feel threatened by
Yeah,
it. I mean,
yeah.
they might turn away because they
Soft
look
politics.
like a massive turd on a spoon. But so did it, and then
Yeah.
found out the German word for runner is Laufer.
Uh-huh.
So as a falafel spoon runner, I was a falafel-laufer. And that was... So this is just like
This is
the
gold.
glorious culmination
yeah, yeah.
of being able to run a marathon at short notice, being able to commit to an awful homemade costume that was out of felt from Hobbycraft and
Wow.
was so warm.
Wow.
And then like having a stupid pun involved. And then I like made a video describing this outfit.
Amazing.
And at the time, on the Chris Evans Virgin Breakfast radio show,
Yeah.
his co-host was running the marathon dressed as a minion.
Okay.
And so they were talking about like ridiculous outfits.
Uh-huh.
Someone phoned in and said that they'd seen this video of
Okay.
me doing it. And so Chris Evans' co-host then like saw it and was
Wow.
describing it to Chris Evans live on air. And I was like, this is everything I hoped.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
wouldn't
yeah,
have done
yeah.
this if I was dressed as like a separation wall.
Yep.
People are talking about it. I'm raising money. It's just
Excellent,
win-win-win.
yeah.
And then Chris Evans was just like, what the hell is this? It sounds stupid. And like, he was trying to be entertaining on air, but
Yeah.
was just like quite dismissive.
Oh.
And in that moment, I thought, I know what I have to do. I have to write a diss track for Chris Evans.
Oh my God.
And this was 2 days before the marathon.
Wow.
I stayed up till 3 a.m.
Oh my God.
writing
Yeah.
some cold disses.
Wow.
And then recorded it and then put it out. And then the fundraising went from like £1,000 up to £5,000.
Oh my God.
And it was just this glorious sequence of events. And at the time, before that, I was in my most like creatively blocked, sad, COVID-y lockdown. Nothing I write will ever matter.
Wow.
And I felt like I'd lost myself in amongst that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so to have something that only I would ever do. On so many, everything
So
about
many
that,
levels.
no one would get halfway to that culmination of events. And at no point did I question it.
Oh my God.
I just knew like what to do
knew what
next.
you had to do.
And I knew that it made sense to me.
Yeah.
And I knew that whatever happened, like it would turn out well and it would be fun.
Yeah.
And it was for a good and just all of these things.
Yeah.
It was a real moment of like, oh, this is why I exist. And it just felt
Yeah,
huge.
yeah.
And I'd felt so small for so long.
That's
So to have something
incredible.
like that. And then I got to like talk about it in my next show
Yeah.
and like perform that track
Oh my
like
God,
on
amazing.
stage and just
Yeah.
all of it.
I guess it's like a culmination of the thing that you love doing. So refinding the thing that you'd lost for yourself a little bit, but then also the fact that it has such importance as well, and like purpose, and really bringing meaning to the work that you do.
Yeah, and I just think that at the heart of it there was a level of silliness.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just didn't feel silly at the time. Or I didn't feel like there was room for silliness because everything was so heavy.
Yeah, but I think often those things can be packaged best with humour, and because it's more palatable for people, isn't it?
Definitely.
You know,
Definitely.
I think that's why it's so brilliant that you're able to access that, because a lot of people aren't able to do that. So you're right, that is a very Harry Baker thing. Did Chris Evans see the diss track?
Yes, he did not respond, but there's no
We are still
way he
awaiting a
wouldn't have
response from
seen
Chris
it.
Evans.
There was, he
Wow.
might not have seen it.
Oh God.
But there was then. Sorry, I will move on.
No,
promise.
I love it.
After it, was part of this fundraising, like
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Loads of people giving like £5, £10, and again, it felt like being part of something bigger, being connected at a time when we couldn't be connected. And then there was an anonymous £1,000 donation.
Oh my God.
And my first thought was, that's got to be Chris Evans. He's seen it,
you
he respects
think?
it. He can't publicly respond because of his ego, but he's sort of done it.
Wow.
But I actually don't think it was him. I think, well, then, I think it was a bunch of other radio DJs who secretly
who
don't
hate
like Chris
Chris
Evans. Who were just like, we need to seed fund this movement. And I can't prove that, and I
Wow.
can't.
I wonder if he still wakes up with nightmares about you.
Exactly.
You really were a falafel full of
Falafel,
love.
falafel. Yes. And the first line of the diss track was, big man Chris thinks he's the alpha, trying to step to the falafel. And
There's no way that he
there's
can
no
respond.
way to recover.
Yeah, no,
There's
he's
no
dead.
way to recover.
You've killed him. You've killed him off.
Yeah.
Slain.
Exactly.
Okay, well, in opposition to that then, a time in your life where you felt like you really didn't have your shit together.
Probably the 18 months previous to that.
Pre-falafel.
Yeah, I mean, definitely COVID as a whole.
Yeah.
But the part of it that I realised looking back on was that I had almost come to define myself as this uplifting, hopeful person. And maybe part of that is the outward appearance of someone who has their shit together.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think especially thinking I see the world in a particular way and I try and share that with people and people respond to it and wanting to be able to do that. And so in a time of crisis, my gut reaction is to dig deep and try and find that silver lining.
For everyone.
And exactly,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just for myself, but for everyone else. And so I've got a monthly newsletter, and at the end of the year was looking back, and pretty much every single month had been me saying, stuff's like a bit rubbish right now, but I think it's just about to be okay. And that went on for 2 years.
Wow.
And it was partly me rescheduling my tour dates, but also
Yeah.
me like doing online gigs, or me doing like a free book giveaway, or just trying to do something, or trying to write a poem about missing hugs and how we all need connection.
To
And that,
contribute, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
and feeling like you're doing something
Yeah.
at a time when people are applauding nurses on their doorsteps
Yeah.
and poets at the bottom of the list of essential people
Yeah.
is what I was telling myself.
Yeah, but also, like, if anything, that time showed how important art was to people, because it's what got them through the day.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But wanting to feel useful
Yes,
and
yeah.
basically being in denial of how bad things were
Right.
on a global scale, but also on a personal
Yeah,
scale.
yeah.
And so in acknowledging that, thinking, oh, if I'm not this upbeat person, who am I?
Yeah.
Like my first book was called The Sunshine Kid, named
Yeah.
after a poem. And that was how I kind of saw
How you
myself.
identified, yeah.
And so I kind of thought, not only can I not perform and do this thing that I love that like gives me such energy?
Yeah.
I'm not even the person that I want to be able to be.
Yeah.
And so that was a real moment of
Yeah.
like shock and revelation. And so off the back of that, started going to therapy and just had 6 months. And also at the time I was trying to write a book. So I was thinking, oh, it's lockdown, we can't do gigs. Let's do a masterpiece.
Write a novel.
Yeah. I think I'm the only person who's thought of this. And couldn't do that and was then feeling even worse.
Yeah.
Because like, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
All my energy is going towards just trying to cope.
Get
with
through the day.
But I wasn't like generous with that at all. I didn't see that that was a valid way to try and exist or spend your time. And so then it was slowly giving myself time to just be an absolute mess and acknowledge that pain and acknowledge that like, I was really struggling.
And like grieve as well. Like we were all kind of grieving a life that we had.
Definitely.
And also terrified of what life was going to look like. Because at that point, it felt like anything could change and societally could like have broken down. Do you know what I mean? We didn't know what we were going back to.
And after so long of like telling myself that things were about to go bad and then they hadn't, like I basically lost hope at some point. I was like, oh, well, I'm never going to be able to do gigs again. And like, would you go into extremes either way?
Is this what it is? Yeah.
And so the upside of that was that therapy is great.
Yeah.
And in being able to acknowledge that pain and that really difficult stuff, I was then able to kind of rebuild myself.
Yeah.
And even now, I'm so grateful for that going forward. Whereas even when things do feel more possible, to have had that chance to work through some of that stuff.
Yeah. Do you feel like that experience has coloured the way that you approach writing now then?
Yes. And I think it's partly that, partly the process of having 2 years of writing without an audience. Because in terms of these poetry slams, when I started out, you would write stuff, you would share it, and someone else would tell you if it was any good.
You get immediate feedback, really.
And whereas I was writing all of these poems and I didn't know if anyone else would like them. So I had to write stuff that I wanted to write or that felt good or that felt like it was what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
And so off the back of that, the last 12 months especially, I've written stuff that just feels right in that moment, and that's been enough. And I've written stuff that's really like stupid and doesn't have any deeper meaning, and to me that's such a valid use of time. But also I've written stuff that is like a 10-minute personal painful poem that doesn't wrap up neatly. And I would never have been brave enough to write that before. And to know that actually that's where I'm at, and so that's therefore what I want to be writing.
That's
and so
amazing.
I think like I am all of those people. I am still a hopeful
Sunshine
person, kid. But that hopefulness feels so much more real when it comes from a place of pain as well. And when you're not just in denial that the world is hard or that other stuff goes on too, and to be able to share stuff and share that you're having a hard time as well as when you're having a good time is people seem to relate to a lot more.
I think so.
And you don't have to be inspirational all of the time. You can just be real, and it shouldn't be, but because that is quite countercultural, people then find that much more helpful. And so in every way I feel much richer for it.
It doesn't surprise me that, you know, when you are maybe feeling most disconnected from yourself, creativity, I think, is allowing your vulnerability to flow through you, if that's positive or negative. And if you're trying to cut yourself off from that and your own truth, then it doesn't surprise me that you could feel so separated from it.
And I just was trying so hard. I was like, everything's a mess, but if I just try a bit hard, I'll be able to write something and that'll fix it. Whereas, again, last 6 months, I've written stuff without trying. And that's what I did when I started. When I was a teenager, I had so much to say and it would just kind of spilled out. I think in that time when that, like you said, that creative, emotional connection feels stunted, I was trying like the mathematical side to take over. And I was like, what if I write something that's really technically crafted because I can slot that in. And actually, one of the few creative endeavours I had during lockdown was I was writing like quiz rounds for friends.
Fun.
And I loved that because that was like solving a puzzle, and it was making something and sharing it. And like a poem felt too big, but I could do that. And so it was interesting how it was trying to come out in other ways.
It was manifesting in different ways.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. 3 things that make you feel like shit.
Number 1, I would say comments about my appearance from strangers on the internet.
Okay.
By and large, people are lovely. And I went through a phase of doing rap battles where people are professionally told to insult you.
Oh my God, I don't know how people do that.
It was a gauntlet, but it was also like a sort of baptism of fire, and it was terrifying. But then everyone's lovely behind the scenes.
Oh my God.
And they're so...
How do you recover from if someone's just insulted you?
Honestly, the first one I did, they had no idea who I was.
Right.
So I got away with it. And it was just lots of generic stuff about like, your girlfriend's like this. And I was like, I don't have a girlfriend.
Joke's on you.
And I brought all of my mates along, and they were just like reacting to everything I said. I was like, oh, I'm such a natural. I'm so cool. And then the second one I did, clearly like I had a target on my back. So this new guy had come in, brought all of his mates, thinks he's good. And it was just 3 rounds about my like teeth. And I hadn't thought about that since I was in school.
Wow,
because in my day-to-day, I don't get bullied.
Yeah. We're adults now. Who does that?
Yeah. And it was so brutal.
Oh my God.
But I did my first ever like freestyle rebuttal because the guy I was up against was just like a bit older. So I was like, you mentioned my teeth, and that's probably true, but you're ancient, so we're both long in the tooth. And I said it in such a like lame way, but you could feel a collective like sigh from the room of like, oh my God, he's still breathing. He's not dead. He's fighting back. Well done.
He's taking everyone down with him.
Yeah. And so like that as a journey, and again like battle by battle, seeing the like slow acceptance from the scene as someone who'd stuck with it and who hadn't just like come in thinking that they could do their own thing.
But I suppose with something like that, you're almost expecting that something like that's going to happen, so you're kind of giving permission. To a degree,
exactly.
With battle rappers,
and especially with like the people you're up against. And then it's weird when people in the comments join in, but they just see it as part of the sport. And like I like called someone out once. I was like, they like messaged me with like a load of rhyming insults, and I was like, I don't know you, this is horrible. And they were like, oh, I'm so sorry. I love what you do. I want to be part of the gang. So that is just a kind of disconnect.
So weird.
But the reason why I bring it up is very recently, a lovely, well-meaning woman messaged me on Instagram, and she is a dentist from Australia. Okay. And she's like seen my videos and like really like the poems, but I just am worried that you might have some form of gum disease and maybe you should get it checked out. Wow. And I just got so angry because that's such an overstep of personal boundaries, but also like it made me feel like shit because this isn't someone who's trying to insult me either. So like when it's someone,
it's like misguided,
kind of, and because it's coming from this like
you.
niceness, I was like, oh wow, maybe I am just like so unavoidably hideous that strangers, the other side of the world, like can't help but tell me. And that is the only person who's ever done anything like that. And that's and this is like after like a couple of my videos, I got a really big response. This is in amongst literally hundreds of people sending me lovely things.
How amazing you are. Yeah, it's mad how that happens.
And yet that's the thing that like stuck with me. Yeah. And even me, Mr. Non-confrontational, in that moment was like, this isn't an okay thing to say. I'm gonna ask you to never message me again. Yeah. And then part of me is worried that I've been too harsh to them. But like...
Yeah. It's wild that it's this weird social media relationship that we have where a lot of people... firstly, I'm sorry that that's happened. And what I'm about to say is not irrelevant to you, but a lot of people would think things and not post or not message the person because you know, why would you do that? I think the relationship that we have with social media now is this feeling like we have a right and we can access anyone and tell them what we think and share our opinions and stuff like that. I mean, I've had it with friends who've been contacted to either be told that they're not eating enough and that this fan is worried about them being anorexic, or that they're worried that they're eating too much and they're worried about that. And it's just like, who the fuck are you? You don't know what people's relationship is with their appearance, firstly. And like, who the fuck are you to be coming along and
I just
sharing
think
your opinion?
when it comes from that place of concern, whether that is real or manufactured.
What is it? It's also power, I think. It's a power dynamic.
It just feels really belittling.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's number one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Number two, I'll try to pick a lighter one. Number two is, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, Mr. Kipling's Angel Slices.
Make you feel like shit?
Because when I'm sad, for a long time they were my go-to.
Wow.
And they are just, even saying it, I can taste it. And it's such a comfort.
I can see the light in your eye as you're talking about it.
And then I would eat a pack of 6.
Oh my God.
And then I would feel a deep sadness. And it was literally the like processed food sugar rush and then crash.
Wow.
And I would say I'm very fortunate that I don't have a complicated relationship with food. Like, I mostly let myself eat unhealthy things, eat quite healthily. Rest of the time,
run a marathon every so often.
Exactly.
Burn
not
it off.
a problem. But in that moment, I was like, oh, okay, this is something I need to stop myself from doing.
Yeah.
Like, I've got friends who've like given up sugar because
my God.
they can't control their relationship with it. And it was just like an insight into that world.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, but how can something that feels so good be bad for me?
And it's called Angels. What?
Yeah. And even talking about it, I do want one. And I'm sure part of the problem is,
I've ever had one.
oh, they're so good, but also stay away.
Yeah.
And like, one is fine.
Yeah.
But they're twin wrapped for freshness, so you do have to sort of have two. But it's
they know what they're doing with that.
Yeah. And it's probably because I eat them when I'm already feeling like shit that I have that association in my mind. So if Mr. Kipling's listening,
oh my God, do better, Mr. Kipling.
It's not you, it's me. So that'd be number 2. Number 3 would be, just to take it back down again, my own shyness.
Okay.
Or I guess social anxiety.
Okay.
In that, when I look back at so in January, it is still January. I don't know where we are. A few weeks ago, I got to go to San Francisco. And it was amazing. And it was specifically for a maths cabaret event. And it was just a dream in that it was me doing a poem about prime numbers alongside some jugglers, alongside some mathematical dancing.
Oh my God.
The headline of the whole event was a guy just doing sums really quickly.
Wow.
And it was
a
the
maths
biggest
dream.
Rock star moment I've ever seen. He literally announced the answer and everyone lost their minds, myself included.
Oh
it was
God.
so great.
Yeah.
But the last time I was in San Francisco, when I was 18, on my like poetry gap year, I typed in poetry slam and that had come up.
Wow.
And I went and I stayed with someone who I'd met at an open mic night in London like 2 months previous. And by stayed with, it turns out they didn't live there, but they knew a group of circus performers who were squatting in a warehouse.
Love that.
And
Sounds very San Francisco.
Exactly. And all of that I took in my stride, unquestioning, 18 years old. This is great. This is what my life is going to be. And compared to that, going back this time, I was so hesitant about going because I didn't know many people, and there was one guy there who I get on with well, who I really like, who I'd only met a couple of times, and I got in my head that like, oh, he's probably going to be busy, or if we do hang out for too long, he won't like me anymore, which is such a ridiculous thing to say out loud.
Yeah.
And thankfully, speaking to friends before that, I knew that in and of myself, but just in my head when I was 18, I was invulnerable.
Yeah.
And I did this stuff without thinking. And the fact that now it feels like such a big deal to do stuff that used to be easy.
Yeah.
I just wish that wasn't the case. And the truth is that I probably felt anxious back then too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think I love people and I love hanging out and I love those opportunities to connect. And I don't know if this is an overhang of COVID or otherwise, but I have such a lack of faith in my own like social skills that people would want to hang out with me.
Gosh,
and
that's
I
so
think,
strange.
you know, I'm someone who gets up on stage in front of strangers, but I'm in control of that
Yeah.
situation,
Yeah.
and I'm saying
It's
stuff
on your terms.
that I've curated
Yep.
to be funny and meaningful and all of this, and so that
Yeah.
is absolutely fine. But like chatting with
yeah.
someone, I don't know, like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just feel I felt so small, and I was really surprised by it. But coming back to the comfort zone thing, I still went, and then I
had a good time.
had a lovely time, like especially with these people that I know, because obviously they want to hang out, even though they're halfway around the world. And so, just like voicing that out loud and remembering that, one, it's okay to feel those things, but also that even someone with a maths degree can be very irrational. Like, because it really caught me by surprise.
I was going to say, like, where do you think that shift has come from over 18? Because I would look at you from an outside point of view and think, you know, with the success that you've had and the fact that you're performing in front of people constantly and all of those things, I understand what you're saying about the curated aspect of it, because I definitely relate to that. But it's just interesting that you felt more confident when you were 18 in social situations like that. Where do you think that shift has been?
I don't know. I think it's like I've always been a mixture of, I guess, introvert and extrovert, and you know, part of being a poet is being happy in your own company and thoughts.
Yeah.
But I get more life than anything from hanging out with my friends. But I know that it does take me a while to warm up with people, or I think because I can be up on stage sharing parts of myself in a big way, I'm very happy in a group scenario to sit back and let other people take the stage, as it were. But I think for whatever reason, I think it's partly probably a lot of people not understanding what I do. So in that day-to-day, whether it's getting a haircut or getting a taxi somewhere and telling someone that you're a poet, and their response to be like,
A bit confused.
yeah. And again, they're never malicious,
No.
but I then project onto that, oh yeah, actually, I would try and like shut down this conversation because I don't want to waste someone's time, or I don't want to like be boring. And it's such a...
It's so wild.
Even when I'm like in a taxi on my way to a really exciting thing, I'll just be like, they wouldn't understand.
Wow.
So it's not worth like trying to explain it.
Yeah.
And like, I remember at uni, like, I would find it much easier to speak to people after I'd done a gig, because I felt like I've shown that part of myself.
Yeah.
They've seen it.
Yeah.
And because it's not an act, because it is me,
Yeah.
it's just like the best version of me.
Yeah.
Then I think who I am makes sense. And so then I can talk about like being nerdy or being vulnerable or the maths and like all of that kind of stuff. But in a group situation, I very rarely like be the one to speak up.
That's so interesting, because I think that saying that you're a poet is far more interesting than saying that you like work in an office 9 to 5 or something like that. You'd think that it would I don't know, cause intrigue from the person who you're talking to.
Yeah, but
maybe
I think
that attention is kind of overwhelming sometimes.
maybe. And also I think people know what to do with it when you tell them something that they've heard of.
Yeah.
Also, and again, those questions come back from a place of interest, and so it's all coming from me.
Yeah. Okay, 3 things that make you feel like the shit.
Yes. Okay. Number 1 is people saying nice things.
Validation.
And I've got friends who are so bad at taking compliments.
Okay.
It makes them really uncomfortable.
Okay.
And I am a needy little flower that wants to be watered. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But also I've had people who almost like apologise for like stopping you. They're like, I'm really sorry, like you're probably busy, but I just wanted to say that like
I'm not busy at all. Sit down. I've actually got half an hour.
Yeah. Tell me more. And I remember when I was first starting out, in quick succession, there were 2 poets who I saw and I thought were incredible.
Yeah.
And I went up to them. This must have been like a couple of weeks apart, but first one I went up to, and I just thought it was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And he was so uncomfortable with that. He like dismissed it out of hand.
Wow.
He was like, let's not blow smoke up each other's ass. And then I felt like a dickhead.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, no, you're right. I shouldn't have said anything.
Yeah.
And so part of my justification for accepting people's praise is that actually that's a really nice thing for them as well.
Yeah.
And if someone's seen you and it's been meaningful to them and they want to share that, then that is really generous of them as well.
Definitely.
And so to dismiss it because you're not comfortable with that is then sort of almost taking something away from that.
It's actually, I remember this was like a lesson that I learned at drama school. Because prior to that, if ever I performed anything, or even whilst I was at drama school, if I did something, and then people were coming up to me to be like, oh, I thought that was really great. And I'd be like, oh, God, no, it really wasn't. Like, I could have done this better, I could have done this better. Actually, that's your ego. So even though you think that you're not being arrogant because you're putting yourself down, you're actually being arrogant in taking up that person's time with your insecurities. Yeah. Just accept the compliment. 100%. And it was a good lesson to learn, actually. Yeah.
And so... And also I realised that one of the things I struggled with lockdown and coming out of it was when we were doing these socially distanced gigs. Yeah. So you're performing and people have got masks on and so it's already weird. Yeah. But one of the harder things about it was I couldn't like see people afterwards. And so...
Where do you get your validation from?
Well, it is that, but also I realised how much of it is about that connection.
It's connection.
And you're not a film. You're not something that people watch and then like...
They're removed from.
And so people don't even have to say, but just seeing that people exist and that they're there and not being able to like even say hello. Like, they don't have to tell you that you're amazing. If they do, it's great. But realising how much a part of performing is that connection and that side of things.
But I think particularly with poetry, one of the powers of poetry is that you're able to articulate complex emotions for people and it resonates with people in a way that's different from like going to theatre or something like that because you've literally put into words something for them. Yeah. And that can be so meaningful. And because of your vulnerability, sometimes afterwards people will want to come and share a bit of their vulnerability with you. And that's an important part of the process, I think. Yeah.
And I found it interesting, stuff I've written more recently that is more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Rather than people coming out like really happy, people coming out in tears and being like, oh, I don't feel as good about this. But also I know that's
it's meaningful.
A nice
it's cathartic
thing.
for them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Number 2, are you familiar with the BBC quiz show Only Connect?
I am.
If I ever get a single question right whilst watching that, I feel incredible.
Like a fucking genius.
And often what I do is I watch the teams confer, having said all of the like necessary information that I wouldn't have got, and then I get there just before them, and I think you guys should have had me on your team. Yeah. You should have had me on your team.
Wow.
And it makes me so happy. Yeah. And I watch it every week, and Grace, my wife, watches it with me,
oh my God.
and I think that's one of the deepest acts of love I've ever witnessed because she would not watch that by herself.
It's the most bonkers show. I think I first got introduced to it through watching Gogglebox. And me being like, what the hell is this show? Like, and then I like watched an episode of it and I was like, how does anyone know what they're doing? It's like people are solving riddles. I don't know what's happening, but I've started to kind of get on board with it now.
I love it. For the last few years I've applied to go on it with some friends. And this year was the first year we got to like do an online audition.
Fun.
But again, I probably shouldn't be saying this recorded, but like the process for getting on it is they send you like a list of questions.
Oh wow.
And they're like, you've got 15 minutes, like time yourself, don't make anything up. And so like this year we gave ourselves a generous 15 minutes, but it meant we got through to the audition.
Fun.
And then the audition came and it was back to like complete rabbit in the headlights. No idea what's going on.
Oh my God. So,
many, many years down the line, I may be on that show.
Oh, I can't wait for it.
And someone else can watch it and feel good that they get the answers before me. So it's not going to happen. But, and then number 3, I want to say like a Mr. Kipling lemon slice just to like...
The battle of the slices.
Have some balance and not get sued. But I don't know if that's actually true. I would say I love cooking. And I think making, but this is the mathematician in me. Like I follow a recipe.
Wow,
Like
to a T.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love that, and so I think trying something new and it turning out vaguely like the picture, makes me so happy.
Yeah.
And I love cooking for people and having friends round, and that act of generosity and preparing. And also probably part of me loves the showing off bit of like
The validation
presenting, and then having a Q&A afterwards. And
people coming out in tears.
Exactly.
What is your favourite thing to cook?
I made a lasagna recently.
Oh.
And it was something about the kind of different parts and the layers and slung it. And I quite like making a massive mess, and then it goes in the oven for a bit, and you've got time to sort of like clean it up
Gather yourself
before,
again.
rather than like, I've had it where friends have come round and it's like 15 minutes to go and I'm just not able to engage.
Throwing things in the pan.
Yeah. And like the whole kitchen's a mess, and I'm just like, can you just sit in the other room while I gather myself and then try and present you something as if it's not been an entirely stressful experience.
Cool. Okay, something that makes you lose your shit in a positive and then a negative way.
I think music. And I love gigs and live music. And last year I got to see Stormzy in Victoria Park.
Oh my God.
At Stormzy Day or Stormzy Fest. And he came outside and he performed a song about rain. And it started to rain.
He is a wizard. And
I was punching my friends in the arm. I was like shaking people. Do you realise what we're witnessing? This is, but like so much, so, like people around were watching me instead of, I was just losing it. I couldn't believe it. And then he performed like another song about rain, and then the rain stopped. And I just was looking like, is anyone else here? What is this is unbelievable. How has he done? Like looking for like secret sprinklers in the sky.
Once you've done Glastonbury, you can do anything.
Yeah, unbelievable. And like on a smaller scale, I just love like lyrics in songs, and especially like sort of slightly dodgy puns, which you get a lot in rap, and just like when it's really satisfying.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, something that makes you lose your shit in a negative way.
The thing that comes to mind is probably I should have better things to care about. But it's probably Zoom calls.
Oh, God, yeah.
A Zoom call that could have been an email.
Wow.
Or a phone call that could have been an email, or anything that could have been an email. I love email. I'm so good at putting all of the key information in a short space of time. And like, especially stuff like I've done hundreds of gigs at schools, like different school every single time, and I know how to do it, and I know what they need. Yeah. And it is for me to say, like, I can do a performance bit, I can do a workshop bit, this is ideal class size, and like I give them all of that. Yeah. Like, this is how much it costs, this is when I'm free. And for someone to then be like, let's schedule in a meeting to like talk about it. And then you go on that, and then it's exactly the same, and it just infuriates me so much.
Wow. So. Yeah. And it's becoming more and more just a part of our lives now, isn't it? Like, I think prior to COVID, I didn't know what Zoom was.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And now it's not every other day that you're kind of having one.
And there was a sweet spot in COVID where I was having such a rough time that I felt able to tell people, I just don't have capacity for that at the moment. And it feels like now there's not a global pandemic on. Yeah. Like, I don't see many other people saying that. So every now and then I'm just like, I can't.
I don't have capacity.
Yeah. And it feels a little bit less acceptable. Yeah. When I think we should normalise just being unable to cope.
Oh my God.
But I think, I've got better at just saying I can't do phone calls. And like, sometimes I have to pretend I'm busier than I am. And I do get a lot of changes. So like, I find an excuse, but I want to say is like, I don't like video calls. Yeah. And that's nothing personal. No. And Like one of my best mates, he loves a good phone call.
Yeah.
And I don't. And so we had to like learn to navigate that.
Wow.
And actually,
Came through it stronger.
like I just need him to text me to tell me
Yeah.
that he's going to call me at this point.
Yeah.
And then we schedule it in and then
Yeah.
that's the time. Whereas
Yeah.
just like
Off
if
the
my
cuff.
phone rings,
Anxiety. I'm like, why are you phoning me? What's
Yeah.
happened?
yeah, if I don't know the number, there's no way I'm answering.
Yeah.
If I do the number, I'm often not answering
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
Even like my mum or my dad, I'll see it and then I'll text them saying, can I call you back in 15 minutes?
Uh-huh.
Just so I can like
Prepare.
get into my phone outfit or like whatever it is. Like I just,
Yeah. I know what you mean.
because I want to be present for it,
Yeah.
but also I want to know when it's going to start
Yeah.
and end.
Okay. A moment you found some shit out about yourself.
Just had my 6th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
A very lovely time.
Mm-hmm.
And on my 4th wedding anniversary 2 years ago, me and Grace were going for a lovely walk in the woods. And Grace turned to me and said, I think we should have couples therapy.
Oh.
And I maintain that that wasn't great timing from her.
On the anniversary.
Yeah. But also,
It's on the mind, clearly.
I think, yeah. I think that there's been a while of a build-up.
And I think they should be on Zoom.
Exactly. Can you put that in an email? And what I realised in that moment, I absolutely freaked out. And what I
Yeah.
realised was that at the time, all of the aforementioned COVID
Yeah.
smallness, and also at the time, me and Chris were signed up with our comedy agency,
Yeah.
and that wasn't going well.
Right.
And so I felt like Grace was the only solid thing in my life.
Yeah.
And the fact that she thought it wasn't solid
Yeah. Terrifying.
just rocked my world.
Yeah.
And she wasn't saying that we should get a divorce.
No.
She was
Well,
saying
actually, it's like
that,
we should invest more in
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
and also that you can have therapy not at a point of crisis.
Yeah.
And it's just a good thing
Yeah.
to do and to check in.
Yeah.
But essentially, that came from a place of her seeing that I wasn't in a great place.
Wow.
And the result of that wasn't that we had couples therapy, it was that I went and had some solo therapy. And
I think we need to work on ourselves now. I think you
yeah,
need to.
yeah, and like it didn't feel like that at the
No.
time, but that was the best possible
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
And I
And very
realised,
loving as well.
yeah, and how huge of her to
Yeah. To
on our
recognise it within you.
But I think the reason why I freaked out
Yeah.
was because my head immediately went to all of the things that I would say in therapy that I haven't said to you face to face
Wow.
because I don't want confrontation.
Yeah.
And because
you've
I
pushed it down.
I thought the longer we're married, the more we become the same person, and so we no longer disagree over anything. Whereas
A very healthy viewpoint.
turns out,
Codependence is
Yeah.
what you.
actually, it's quite good to have different lives and different interests. And so, yeah, but it was such a lightning bolt moment
Yeah.
of, oh, okay, there's a lot going on here
Yeah.
that I need to address.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Okay, shittest piece of advice you've received.
There's two that I thought, one related to that,
Uh-huh.
and on reflection, it wasn't advice and it wasn't given to me,
Okay.
but I held on to it for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And I was watching the film Interstellar,
Love that film.
and in that film, there's a little robot companion. I've not watched it for ages, but the AI sort of interface.
Oh, yeah.
And at some point, he dials it down to 90% honesty. Because as a robot, it was too brutally
Brutal,
honest
yeah.
for his emotional human
Wow.
way of living. And I remember looking at that and thinking, okay, yeah, that's a good way to live, 90% honesty.
Yeah.
And so it meant that I used that as an excuse to not have any difficult conversations because that was the 10%.
Yeah.
And actually, like, in all my relationships, like, I'm pretty much there, but I'm just,
Yeah.
like, not telling you that you've done
Just
this thing
holding
that
something
annoys
back
me.
a little bit. Yeah.
And honestly, that is not a good way to be.
Yeah.
And through this couples therapy that became solo therapy, became, it has to be 100% honesty.
Yeah.
Even when it's really difficult.
Yeah.
And that led to some of the most difficult conversations
Oh
I've
my
had,
gosh.
which then led to some of the richest relationships and
Yeah,
friendships I
yeah.
have.
Yeah.
And also, it's a film and it's a robot, and no one was telling me to do that, but I held on to it.
I love that.
And
Yeah.
I honestly think I was wrong,
Yeah.
and that is wrong.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because I've definitely done that, where you feel like you're almost trying to protect people from
Yeah.
your honesty
Yeah,
in
yeah,
order
yeah.
to have a better relationship. But actually what it does is it cuts you off from yourself, and then they're not getting the real you because you're not allowing them to see it. Whereas like people, and you can feel it when other people are doing it with you as well. Like if someone's kind of being a bit of a martyr about things, and you can tell that there's something
Yeah.
up with them,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and it does feel like a block or a boundary between your relationship. And what I've said to my friends is that like I have so much capacity for you that like it's only going to make me love you more a lot of the time if you just like tell me honestly how you feel about things.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The other specific advice that I take issue with is, if you come across this phrase, those who pray together stay together.
I have not.
And it was at Chris's wedding.
Okay.
He had a band, amazing musician, amazing band, and like we got up and did a song.
Right.
And in our live shows, we like would do a little freestyle section. So I
Amazing.
had this idea that at Chris's wedding, people would have bits of paper that they could write sort of like advice for them on. And then they would
Great.
throw paper planes at us. And then mid-song, I would pick them up and like
That's so
incorporate them into a
fun.
rap. And honestly, at least 10 of these bits of paper said on it, those who pray together stay together.
Wow.
And it is just because of that specific like Christian circle
Yeah.
of whatever
Yeah.
that we were in. And I just think people like it because it rhymes.
Yeah.
And I think, and I will say this proudly, it is the equivalent of he who smelt it dealt it.
Yeah. There's no logic to
And I
it.
just like... And maybe if you're talking about prayer as sharing your needs and vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
and the fact that you can do that with the person that you love and that will strengthen your relationship and that you should go to therapy, great.
Yeah.
But also, it just annoyed me because then I was trying to freestyle about the same thing
Yeah,
that already
over and over
rhymes. So
again.
what am I adding to it? And so,
Couples who play together.
yes.
That's a nicer one.
Yeah.
How fun.
Yeah.
Shit you wish you'd known sooner.
That just because someone is confident does not mean that they are correct.
Okay.
And vice versa.
Okay.
That like shy people,
Aren't incorrect.
myself included,
Yeah.
can have a lot to offer.
Wow.
And I've got certain... Grace is the best at this. She can see a glint in my eye when I've got something I want to say. And she
Okay.
will bring me into a conversation. And I'm
That's so
forever grateful
good.
to her.
She's a
But
facilitator.
yeah, I've got a few people who are really good at that.
Yeah.
And I think essentially, alongside the therapy and everything else, the crux of our difficult relationship with our agent was that we weren't a kind of stereotypical act that they would normally have.
Yeah.
And they were trying to put us down the very
Box you.
cookie cutter route that they had for everyone
Yeah.
else. And I knew that's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But they seemed so confident.
Yeah.
And they presented it like there's no alternative.
Yeah.
Whereas I'd been living an alternative for 5 years as a poet, just sort of
Yeah.
doing stuff willy-nilly. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't until we kind of parted ways and I was able to do things on my own terms and do it well, both in a creative capacity, but also in even by their metrics of like reaching people and it
Yeah.
being successful, whatever
Yeah.
that means, to realise that they are just completely blagging it as well. And
Yeah.
what they do has worked for them and will work for some people, but it wasn't going to work
But
for
it's
me.
quite formulated, isn't
Yeah.
it? And if you don't fit into that.
And I think, again, me trying to be as open as possible, saying, oh, okay, I'm not sure about that, but
Yeah.
maybe. And they would just see that to be a sign of weakness. And so would
Yeah.
just tell you what to do. And so
Yeah.
that became a really, to my mind, toxic
Yeah.
environment and relationship.
Yeah.
And I never felt able to just call them out and be like, I don't think you know what you're talking about
Yeah.
because you've never dealt with a poet before.
Yeah.
Or like you don't know that I'm not doing the school gigs out of a sort of reluctant necessity to make a living. I'm doing it because I was in school when I started writing
Yeah.
and someone came in and it made a massive difference to my
Yeah.
life. And I love going into schools.
Yeah.
And you don't understand that me and Chris will always leave Edinburgh early to go to a festival in Kettering because we played there since we were teenagers.
Yeah.
And it's the one weekend of the year where we are rock stars. And yes, that's when the Edinburgh Awards are on. No, we've never been nominated for an award. Like, no, you're not invited to the festival because you might taint it.
Yeah.
And just like all of this stuff
Yeah.
of just, I guess, and hand in hand with that, like trusting my gut and knowing that the moment I decided to be a poet and not a doctor, I chose an unconventional life.
Yeah.
And I did it because I knew it was worth it.
Yeah.
And I knew that whatever I end up doing, I will write and I will share it. And if that means I'm doing it whilst being a full-time math teacher, that's still fantastic.
Yeah.
And so how can I expect someone else to understand that or to facilitate that for me if they've not ever considered that path themselves?
Yeah.
And so it is terrifying sometimes, but it's completely joyful most of the time to be able to do something you love that no one else is doing or that other people are doing, and then you can share in that weird kind of thing that you're navigating together. But just to know that if you love it, that's enough.
Yeah.
And if you can make it work, amazing. And the more you can put into it and get out of it, the more worthwhile that is.
Yeah.
And that if someone is heavily invested in the industry or the system, they're not necessarily going to help you to subvert that industry or system because it's not in their interest.
Yeah.
And just because they're friendly doesn't mean they care. And that feels really brutal. But our agent was essentially lovely. Yeah. But also very unhelpful for who I am and what I needed.
It's really interesting that you say that because I feel like there's parallels between like acting agents, for example. And it's that thing of you have something to offer as like a creative and the things that you make, but you are looking for someone who can assist you to, you know, make that have longevity and like find you work and stuff like that. But what often comes with that is a power dynamic, which I don't know whether that's necessarily useful. And I think, you know, for actors, you're really looking to have these gatekeepers on your side so that they can help you find things. But like I say, there's a power dynamic that comes with that where you just kind of take everything that they say for gospel but they actually, there's a beauty in them admitting that they might not know something or that like, let's work it out together. Let's find where you fit together as opposed to like, this is what I've done, this is what I've always done, and this is how you're going to fit into it. A lot of people aren't able to step down from that pedestal and be like, oh yeah, I actually don't know, let's like figure it out together kind of thing.
And I just think to have something presented as the only way is so arrogant and short-sighted. And I think, and again, I'm very fortunate, a lot of people don't have as much agency in what they're doing and feel like they do have to do these gigs or these jobs that they don't necessarily want to do, but it's a stepping stone towards having that kind of independence. But I am in a position where I don't have to do that. And so it's countercultural, but I've booked my tour gigs on Wednesdays and Thursdays so I can be home at the weekend because I live by the sea and I have friends. And that doesn't make sense to someone who is telling you that you have to cane it for about 10 years and then you'll be famous and then you can do what you want. And some people are doing it because they want that. And success will be when they are famous and then it will all be worth it. Whereas I think you've got to enjoy the ride and you've got to do it in a way that
it's sustainable.
And then you can sleep at night.
It all comes back to the sleep. Okay, so we're now at the point of a shit shot. So that is a photo that to the outside eye looks like you had your shit together, but at the actual time, you definitely didn't.
Okay. I struggle with this, and I think that's a good thing. I think I don't...
Every single photo is just panic behind your eyes.
Honestly, I went back through my Instagram and I was like, what was the time when I was like feeling a bit rough? I actually put this thing up. And I came across this picture, which is me on a train at 9 a.m. in the morning, bawling my eyes out because I just watched the Lego movie. And I was like, okay, no one's watching that thinking this guy's got his shit together. But I've got a two-part image for you.
Two-parter.
I'm just going to, so I can have a grand reveal. And I hope this is as interesting in audio as it has potential to be visually. So I I've got a love-hate relationship with haircuts.
Great.
For a long time, they were sort of necessary evil, and I'm not good at the small talk, and I tell them I'm a poet, and I
Wow,
struggle.
yeah, hell.
And then up at the Edinburgh Fringe, before the festival itself, local hairdresser was doing a special offer.
Great.
And got
Fringes,
a haircut.
Edinburgh Fringes.
Exactly. I think they honestly had some kind of fringe-based plan, and I was in. And got this haircut and just felt amazing.
Wow.
And I was like, this is incredible. This is me now. And then did the
Put
fringe.
your chevron jacket on, you're good to go.
Exactly. And so every year since, I would go there, start of the month, and that'd be part of the routine.
Okay.
And then my friend who lives in Bristol, who just has amazing hair always, he told me about his local barber, and I went there, and they were great. So I was like, okay, I've not found a hairdresser locally, but if I can just time it so I'm in either Edinburgh or Bristol every couple of months, I can probably get by. Until November 2021.
Wow.
I had a gig in Edinburgh, was staying over. I thought, great, I'll get myself a
It's
trip.
haircut time, baby.
And so first image is haircut from the front.
Okay. Great.
Looking good.
Looks good.
Feeling
Nice.
happy.
Slick.
Yeah.
It's a bit shorter than I was expecting.
Okay.
And then this is a haircut from the back.
Oh. How would you describe what we're seeing?
That's not a fade.
It is. It feels like someone's done a sort of like Barbenheimer split. Instead of left to right, it's top to bottom.
So Ken's on top.
Yeah. So we've got a sort of like kind of swirl.
Is it like those ice gems? Is that what it was called?
Yeah,
The little
yeah.
sweet.
Like a
yeah,
nice
yeah,
gem topping, and then it's just sort of
Shaved.
completely flat. But then right at the back, it's as if they like almost tried to shave a kind of like Batman into it. But
Okay.
lost confidence, and they, and in hindsight,
What is that?
at the end of the haircut,
Yeah.
they didn't do the
They
thing
didn't
where
do the
they show you the mirror.
thing. Wow.
And that's because they knew what they'd done.
knew.
And also, the guy who has previously done my haircut
different
there,
person.
he walked past as it was going on
Oh
and said
my God.
hello. And I had a moment of like, okay, if you're there, who's it?
Whose hands are these?
And it was, and I'd clearly like gone for a cheaper one because it was a
Wow.
trainee person.
Oh no.
But
You played fast and loose with your hair. Yeah. Oh my God.
but that's tricky because that's one of my two safe hairdressers
spaces.
in the United Kingdom.
Wow.
And I've not gone
You've
back.
not- oh no, oh my God.
So now all I've got is Bristol.
Wow. Your safe space. Wow.
So
Gosh. Did you feel like you were able to forget about it because it was at the back of your head?
yeah, because also I didn't notice. I got home
Oh my God.
and Grace started pissing herself
Oh
laughing.
no.
And so
Not
I'd
what you
like
want when
done
you-
like the gig. I'd like had a couple of days with that, and like it was.
Wow.
I was wearing a hat for a fair bit, and because it was
Okay.
winter, and after that I was wearing a hat
Yeah.
24/7. But it was such a like tale of two halves.
Humbling
a deeper
experience.
metaphor.
Yeah.
But how even when in front it looks like it's all gone well.
What is it? Party at the front. What is it? Business at the front, party at the back. That's what they say about mullets, isn't it? That's like
Yeah,
party
this
on
was
top, chaos at the bottom.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm so sorry for that experience.
No, it's fine.
It's not done much for your exposure therapy of going to a barber's.
Exactly.
Okay, well, Harry Baker, have you got your shit together?
I think I have got more shit than ever. So I have got my shit together,
Yeah.
but crucially that includes like the actual shit.
Mm.
And so I think in holding on to that,
Yeah.
I am able to be a better, more full-rounded person. And I have moments, I feel a lot more fluctuating these days. So within a week, I will feel like I'm on top of the world and then feel like an absolute hot mess.
Yeah.
And I'm able to hold those
Yeah.
in better stead. And I used to think as soon as I was like feeling a bit wobbly,
Yeah.
that I would never be happy again,
Yeah.
and I would spiral.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm more comfortable in myself
Yeah.
now than I have ever been.
Amazing.
And that's a really lovely thing
Yeah.
to be able to say. And I think part of that is that some of the parts of myself that I love is the vulnerability and is the rawness.
Yeah.
And in being able to hold those parts, it just helps with everything.
Well, it feels like part of you getting your shit together has been acknowledging that there's shit there in the first place and
Definitely.
sitting with it and getting to know it, I guess.
Go back from a very nice ending. We can put this in another thing that makes me feel like the shit
Yeah.
is clearing my email inbox.
Okay.
Like getting that
Oh my
white
God.
space.
Yeah,
I get
yeah.
obsessed with it.
Yeah.
I found out recently that you can do that on WhatsApp. You can archive messages.
Yeah.
And then when they reply, it comes back into your main thing.
Oh.
So rather than like worrying about who you've not replied to,
That's good.
I now like have that as well.
Yeah.
And what I did was I tried to apply that to the rest of my life. So I was like, if there's anything like vaguely worrying me, I need to get that out of my mental inbox.
Yeah.
So then I've got a clear head, then I'll sleep fine, then I'll be able to write loads of great poems.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a good way to do it. So part of having that shit together is letting it stay there, let it exist, and to sit in the shit and fester, but also to grow from that.
Yeah.
And to not be afraid of it.
Yeah.
And so that is where I'm currently at.
Okay. Well, amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
You're so welcome.
Yay.
And now here's one of Harry's poems called Wonderful, which is the title poem of his new book and tour. Harry will be on tour around the UK from May, and you can find out more information about that on his website, harrybaker.co, or his social media platforms.
May you always picture where you are as where you're meant to be. May you take in your surroundings like you visited especially. We all end up in the soil eventually, so may you carry such goodness that it nourishes for centuries. May you see life as a show, and may the entry fee be empathy, sat front row with an empty seat for friends in need. And when you're on form, be generous and spread that energy. And when you're not sure, be gentle with yourself and don't forget to breathe. You need not be defined by your many feats. You are not a centipede. There is a joy in doing something terribly. May you share bruise and bruises, and may you do this tenderly. You are the most improved you there has ever been. Of all the words you'll ever hear, remember these. Life is too short to eat celery. Life is too long to feed jealousy. Life is likely just the right length to need therapy. May you be seriously silly. May you be wickedly kind. May you be brilliantly dumb sometimes and yet stupidly bright. May you certainly have doubts. May your weirdness be the norm. May the coolest thing about you be your warmth. May you be powerfully vulnerable, or at least mightily soft. May you be a contradiction and yet at the same time not. And whether you are any, none, or all of the above all, may you know that you are loved. May you understand that it's okay to change your mind, particularly if your views are not the same as mine. May you always make room for playfulness. It may just save your life. And trust whatever makes your heart grow cannot be a waste of time. It may not make you money, it may not even make sense, but if it makes you happy, it is worth it in the end, and it is worth it at the time, and it deserves your very best, and you are never too busy to catch your breath. Just as you cannot be in traffic without being traffic. Life is not something that you are stuck in while it happens. There is more in you than you could possibly imagine. The very fact that you exist makes everything a bit more magic. And when it all feels too much, and there is little you can do, may you still see the best in people, and may people include you. May one thing match the gravity of all you've ever done. This wonderful reality. The best is yet to come.